The 24-week miracle. I can remember one fall afternoon a couple of years ago, Children's Services calling me, asking me to take in a little one into our foster home. So Nick was 6 months old and 5 pounds. Now think about that, 6 months old and 5 pounds. Hi, I'm Kathleen Paydo, and I am a registered nurse and a foster mom in Ohio. My husband Ron and I have been foster parents for over 30 years, taking many children into our home. And my thought on this Life Summit is that our involvement in the foster care world is us saying yes to a better quality of life for area children. And we do that by brightening children's futures and putting others' needs before our own, because these are typically children who've come from abuse, neglect, dependency positions, and they've suffered trauma and they need a lot of love and support. So I'll get back to the story about Nick in a little bit here, but let me tell you a little bit about foster care. There are about 400,000 foster children in our country to date, and that number fluctuates, but then there's probably another 350 to 400,000 children who have crossed the southern border. And some of those children are in government detention, some of are with sponsors, and some sadly are lost. So however you look at the numbers, there is really a big need for foster care in our country. It's also called out-of-home placement because not all children are living in foster homes. But there are different types of foster homes, for starters, which I'd like to explain to you. There's your regular standard home for children who are considered to have regular needs. And then there are treatment foster homes, and those are homes that have children maybe with a little bit more advanced needs and need parenting skills that are a little bit higher. Veteran foster families often do this. There's also medically fragile foster homes, and sometimes I take in medically fragile children, my background is being a registered nurse. And then some children are not able to be in out-of-home placements in a home setting, so they have to go into like a residential treatment center. The other thing that's happening in the world today in foster care is something called kinship care. And kinship care is pretty much considered best practice for most children, where they're staying with one family member. Could be a grandparent or an aunt and uncle. So it could be a blood relative, but it actually could be a non-blood relative to be placed in kinship. Maybe a teacher or a counselor or a friend or a neighbor steps forward and says, we see this family's having problems. They're going to go into the system. We'd like to volunteer to help. And they go through a safety screening of sorts, and sometimes it's deemed possible that the children can stay with kinship, which is really great to help them stay bonded to their families, as well as supporting the culture that they're used to. Some of the things with foster care is that foster children are kind of seen as bad kids. And to be honest, foster parents are kind of seen as bad parents. You know, if you look at media, we're always portrayed as these, mean people with broken down homes and no water and no toys and all of this nonsense. But I will tell you that taking foster children in has really been a great experience. We work very hard to help them, heal past their traumas, or at least heal through them, I guess. And, we emphasize whatever their God-given talents are and teach them activities of daily living, a lot of safety skills, with the whole idea to decrease this victimization and giving them momentum in their life. We don't want children to be stuck in this chapter of their life forever. It is part of their history, but it shouldn't define them forever. So we work very hard in foster care to promote their self-esteem. And, my family specifically, we take in sibling groups. So we work very hard to keep siblings connected. So I will say that, the other life factor here is adoption. And especially when we are parenting young teens, or sometimes the parents of our own foster children are expecting again, and we encourage adoption with them. Back in the 1970s, about 9% of the children in America were put up for adoption for various reasons: abuse, neglect, dependency. But now, really only about 1% of children go into adoption, and sometimes it is the best thing for them. Sometimes families just are not able. It doesn't mean they don't love them, it's just that they're not able to parent them. So, for every baby that goes up for adoption, there's about 35 families out there waiting to adopt that child, give them a loving home. So, I really strongly encourage that with young families, young parents, young moms, especially because open adoptions are a little more common than they used to be. You know, it's not like sign your baby away and you never get any contact or interaction with them. A lot of times it's possible for people to have some controlled visits, you know, or some letters or some pictures. I know one set of children that we fostered and they eventually ended up getting adopted. We still keep in contact with the great grandmother. She's kind of more our generation and a very kind lady and wants to know how the children are doing from time to time. And so the adoptive family allows us to send a picture or two from time to time, or, just some general support of the family. We didn't cut them off because this all happened to their family. They still love the children. They're just not able to take care of them. So now back to the story of Nick. Nick is that little 24-week miracle baby. I've actually had two go through my home that were born at 24 weeks. And he was actually born at 1 pound, 2 ounces, what is considered a micro preemie. Very, very small, about the size of a cell phone. And he was also born to a drug-exposed mother. So that meant he was born with drugs in his system. So he had to work through that. But this adoptive family, once he passed through our home, spent about 8 months with us. And then once he made it into an adoptive placement, this family's worked very hard to help with his medical conditions. As a baby, he had to be fed by a tube and couldn't eat by mouth. And he had to have oxygen, and he was very floppy baby, very low muscle tone. And now, things are improving. He's able to eat on his own. He's saying a few words. His speech is still delayed, but he is able to communicate. And he's walking, and he throws a ball, and actually is playing t-ball now. So that's a pretty great story for a little tiny baby who maybe some people think, well, at that size and age, they don't feel pain, and they don't have feelings, and it's okay if they die. But you know what? They really are wonderful human beings, and they're capable of feeling and of love and cuddling and bonding and a great little silly personality. So I'm here to tell you that 24-week babies and beyond can survive, and they can have good quality of life. So that's a big thing for life with me in foster care. So let me tell you a little bit more about the fact that foster families need a lot of support. It's very difficult in our day and age to raise children by yourself, especially children who have gone through the foster care system. They often have suffered a lot of trauma, again, physical or mental abuse, a lot of dependency issues where they don't have adequate food or housing or clothing or medical condition or schooling. And they need people to step forward and help kind of manage all of these problems in their lives. Foster parents' job is to be a bridge for that other family. And we often do work hand in hand with the biological family, helping in any way that's under our control to help strengthen them while taking excellent care of their children while they're in our home. It's a huge responsibility. And I'll tell you that 50% of foster parents quit after the first child placement or their first year as a foster parent because they just felt overwhelmed and they just weren't really prepared for the reality of it. And so this is where I like to bring community members into this conversation. There are a lot of things that people can do for the foster care world, which is not just simply being a foster parent. I understand that there are many people who are not interested in that. But there are other things called alternative caregivers, and those are people who do some minimal paperwork, background check, and they're able to babysit for the children or even have them for a weekend. And I think our communities, especially our churches, need to step up and support foster families. And the way you can do that is by introducing yourself to a family. There's typically families at your church who are foster families. And introduce yourself and offer to get to know the family. And, consistent routine care is what really helps us the most. So I had this dear lady come up to me at church one year and introduced herself, and we got to know each other. And eventually she became kind of like my Tuesday night caregiver. So she would pick whatever children up I had in my home on Tuesdays and take them out to her farm, and mud was always involved. And I would send out, their muck boots and clean pajamas. And she would not only let them play all afternoon and evening, but she would feed them, bathe them, bring them home, and they were ready for bed. And I just knew that I always had Tuesdays off, that I could go out to dinner with somebody, or I could, whatever, make an appointment. And that just really helped with the longevity in our home. And she's been doing this for me for years. So that's been very helpful. We also have some church members who like to garage sale shop. So some of them, find tennis shoes or nice quality clothing items or toys and clean them up. And I will just come home and there'll be a stack of things on my front porch. And I know that the ladies have been here from church. And it's very, very helpful. So I tell every foster family that wants to get into this, try to find 4 or 5 really great support families who can help you in your vocation of fostering. And, not only are you supporting the foster family, but taking the children out, the foster children out, to do something different that they're not doing at their foster home. Maybe it's teaching them how to sew or play checkers or fish, or again, running around on the farm in the mud. Just anything simple. That all those things build their self-esteem, and all those positive interactions help erase the negative ones that are part of their past. And so I think if our communities could get together and really support these children's lives, that it would make such a big difference, because what they learn as children, they grow up into adults and they will be passing on to their own children. So it's really a generational support. So that is my thoughts on the Life Summit and how foster care fits into that. It was lovely talking with you. Have a good evening.